I'm joined by Robson, Senior HR Director with a proven track record in scaling companies globally. Today we're talking about leading dispersed teams in a world of constant disruption. The world is changing at breakneck speed, and I think we're facing more challenges than we've ever faced.
Absolutely. The world is certainly moving at a pace that we've probably never seen in our lifetime. And so I think from an HR perspective, it's never been more important that we're front and present and centre and understand what is happening in organisations and how our employees are feeling. Because fundamentally, many of our employees globally are experiencing different challenges personally, politically, economically, and understanding what's happening at any given point in time has never been more critical, as I would see it. And people are nervous. And so we've got a responsibility to step up and lead the organisation through change, but we've also got a responsibility to step up and support employees at probably quite an individual level versus a one-size-fits-all perspective. And that brings a whole set of unique challenges and an additional workload to HR teams that didn't exist, only a handful of years ago.
I completely agree, and I think, most companies now operate across multiple geographies, and this is a completely new challenge for HR professionals. Traditionally, you would have your little team, you would potentially all share one office or, a range of offices within one geography. And now HR professionals are really having to navigate a whole new world.
Absolutely, and I think we've seen that probably more than in any other industry in tech, where there's been a massive focus on nearshoring, offshoring, building out hubs in India, in Bulgaria, in South Africa, for example, and wanting to get ahead of the competition and to be first to market with product innovation, but doing that in a much more cost-effective way than probably a lot of organisations operated with historically. And so by operating in these new worlds constantly, organisations and HR professionals are constantly faced with a new set of cultural challenges, a new set of local market considerations, and learning all of that at pace while keeping the wheels in motion.
Awareness, I guess.
Yeah, awareness. I think the toll it takes on you from a workload perspective too is not to be underestimated. If you think about establishing a new hub in South Africa, for instance, there's a whole heap of different legislative requirements that you might not have navigated in the past. But by the same token, the business is asking you to move faster than ever before. And that constant disruption is something that isn't going away. And I think one of the areas that I spend a lot of time thinking about is what is the right organisational design from an HR perspective to most effectively address these challenges. What do we manage centrally? What do we manage locally? How are our ways of working as a team so those that aren't in the HQ location feel connected and feel as if they're contributing to the HR strategy and agenda and having a meaningful impact, even though they might be 10,000 kilometres away, I think is best done by partnering closely with those people who are distant from you, understanding what works for you, what's best for the local market, where are the potential blind spots that we may have missed because we're not in your shoes. And so this very deliberate over-partnering with your HR stakeholders all around the world has never been more critical, but I think often overlooked. And so that constant checking in with yourself, am I approaching this in the right way? Have I got the intelligence I need to be able to design my org, to navigate the unknown, would certainly be what I do, but also recommend other professionals think about in this climate. And I think quite comfortably through to the end of this decade, that is still going to be the standard operating model, if you like, quite likely beyond that too.
Yeah, and I guess there's a big responsibility on not just HR leaders within the business, but leaders within businesses to really listen to what their international employees are going through. That concept of we all work for the same goals, we all work for the same company, but some of our workforce may be experiencing things that others aren't, and having that sensitivity and that sensitive approach to those nuances.
Absolutely. I think, I've talked about how HR needs to have their finger on the pulse and understand what's going on and be very deliberate in how they get that information and then what they do with it. But I think it's even more important from the business units that we support and helping leaders understand the value in them taking a handful of minutes out a day to check in with their teams that might be in Costa Rica, they might be in Singapore, it'll really depend on the organisation. And a great example that I heard of recently was when there was the most recent hurricane in Florida, which was devastating. Local sales leader we had in the UK who managed teams there collated a list of everybody that was in that area that was impacted, contacted them all ahead of time, made sure we were aware and that we were providing support where we could, that we were providing time off where need be for people to essentially rebuild their lives. And those gestures in this very disrupted world that we live in are worth their weight in gold.
They absolutely are. I spoke to a client recently who they have a huge hub in LA, and with the fires out there, a lot of their employees were actually effectively homeless. This is quite an exceptional example. They went above and beyond and converted some of their meeting rooms into temporary dormitories for their employees to physically move into, which I thought was exceptional, and definitely setting the bar quite high for what the employee's duty of care can be to their employees. So
yeah, I love that example. And I think one of the advantages probably of COVID was that it made us more human and switched on with that type of kind of employer practice. Organisation I worked for during that period of time had a significant group of employees in India. And what we did to help those individuals, but also their families, their quite distant family at times, to be able to keep their family together and to support their relatives when they were really in dire straits, will always stay with me. And those acts of care and that showing up genuinely is probably one of the most effective retention tools that I think an organisation can have these days. And viewing employees as commodities or it being a transactional relationship is very much practice of the past. And I think in tech in particular, or media for instance, or the creative industries, you have employees that are expecting that now. That high-touch experience, that understand me personally, understand my world, and then I will give back 10 times more than I would otherwise. And yes, there's something very rewarding about that, I think.
I mean, empathy and kindness can positively impact the bottom line. It is a commercial decision, but it also comes from a place of kindness and empathy. So you can have both. The kind of traditional idea of the hard-nosed corporate business that, it demands a lot but doesn't give a lot back. That's a thing of the past.
100% agree with you. And I think more and more people are aware of that and are tapping into that. And back to living in this really disrupted world, people, all of us individually, collectively as families or as friendship groups, are going to experience something or have already experienced something that's really quite unsettling. And we always remember the people that looked after us outside of work and inside work during those periods of time. When we look around what's happening in all parts of the world, on our doorstep in Europe and more broadly, this isn't going away. And yes, time zones will always be there, but a Slack message that you send when you first get up in the morning, or you check in with somebody in the US just before you clock off at the end of the day, these gestures will really go quite considerably.
So, Carl, we've talked a lot about the kind of geopolitical background from an employee perspective. How do you see this from an organisational development perspective and an employee perspective?
In this environment, it's never been more important to really look very closely and partner really closely with your leaders on their org design and their org needs. The first is employees are looking for more stability. They're looking to build more trust in their employers. The days of growth at all costs, hire, whatever you like, are behind us, but those memories are still very fresh for employees. And so building an organisation responsibly is what I talk about a lot. Understanding how you as an HR professional, for instance, are directly enabling your organisation's 3-5-year strategy, whatever that might be, or it might just be this financial year through very targeted investment in headcount. We all know that the focus on the bottom line is really quite significant at the moment in this climate. And so where are you getting most bang for your buck? Where are you investing for the most value add to your business and to the HR function? And I think some great examples or changes that I've seen recently in the market is a move away from generalist hiring or business partnering and focusing much more on employee relations or total reward roles, for instance. And I think that's very reflective of organizations navigating organizational design and development with much more care and reflection than they have in the past, and wanting to make sure that they're stabilizing the ship as much as possible. And I think that's a great evolution we've seen in the last couple of years, and I expect that will continue.
Yeah, and from my perspective, I've seen a huge increase in specialist roles within talent development, learning, all of that good stuff in the OD function, where it shows it's a great indicator of that organisation really investing in their people and really caring about retaining the right people in the right roles. And it's great to see organisations investing again in that, which kind of fell off a cliff a little bit.
Absolutely, yeah, no, I think that's a great point. And when we think about the reality of leading or working in a really disruptive world, having a clear sense of purpose from a learning perspective and feeling as if your organisation is investing in you will go a long way to addressing some of those potential attrition concerns that organisations have been grappling with over the last few years. And I think the organisations of the future will be the organisations that build a true culture of learning. If we're not constantly learning, we're going to fall behind. I've been spending a lot of time digging into AI and ML recently. I'm not a data scientist or I'm not a computer scientist, but this is the reality of the future, and we need to stay current and be committed to that. And organisations investing in those talent development roles are definitely putting their right foot forward.
So I guess a note to end on then is what advice would you give to HR professionals who are, navigating their globally dispersed teams and navigating all of the challenges that we've talked about today?
So I think the first and most important piece of advice I would give is listen. Have a clear understanding of what is happening in each of the teams or the geos that you support, and that being present and that showing up and genuinely caring piece has never been more important. But that also gives you some incredibly valuable insights to then go and build your organizational design and development agenda, and to be able to go and do the same with the leaders that you partner with if you're in a business partnering role, for instance, which I am. That knowing your world inside out has never been more important, and it will help you build the right stable and likely profitable organizations for the future. And that's definitely how I see us moving as a profession, and how I see the industries that I've got experiencing evolving this year.
Carl, it's been an absolute pleasure having this conversation with you today, and I'd like to thank you so much for taking time out from your busy schedule to join us.
Thank you for inviting me along. It's been an absolute pleasure to see you.